But anyway, actually those two powerful women, the three, are very tough acts to follow. But I will say, Victoria, she said that she was very surprised somehow that she felt that this field that Varushka found herself in was not a field for women, but I think it takes a woman. I think it could be done by someone. If you're vulnerable, it's like, okay, what's left to do? You can kill me. But, you know, but I'm not dead now. So I think that's why the women always win the arguments, actually. For that reason. So I hope that's just a precursor of what's going to happen, that she will win this argument for us. So I wrote some things down. I'm not so sure what of this I'm going to say, but Dominic introduced me to this little trailer, and a little fire was lit in me. And so it started to spill out. And so I called him and said, yeah, I'll go with you to this thing, this event. I felt like, you know, fighting for Varushka just came out like that. I also fight for my own cause, my own project, and it's easier to talk for others, so I'll give myself a break and speak for others tonight. It's much easier. So, my story it doesn't start in Nepal, but at some point, I found myself moving to Nepal back in 1980-something. I went there to Asia and came back and thought I should go over there. I think that we don't have it right in the States. There's something wrong with the way our lawnmowers come out of our garage and everybody comes out at the same time, mows the lawn and comes back in. There's something very freaky about this. I'm terrified. As a teenager. So I went to Nepal and opened up a solar electric company to electrify the Himalayas. And I did that. My parents asked me, was it something they said that made me run so far away? I said, don't worry, Mom, that is not you, it's all over America. But you can't escape where you're born. But while I was, so I came back, but while I was over there, I remember being in a village, one of my first villages that we were electrifying, and we had to tell the villagers that solar was good, it gave free energy from the sun. And many were very skeptical because they felt that that was some trick of a foreigner, a politician perhaps, who was trying to trick them. And, but they're very innocent, you know, in the villages. And a young boy was testing out his English on me, because his parents didn't speak any English, and he came up to me and he wanted to test out his English. Moreover, he wanted to convince us to electrify his village with solar energy, which is something we had already decided to do, but nonetheless had that wish. And he said to me, "Sir, the national grid has not reached here." You know, he was trying to say grid. There's a grid, you know, the electric grid had not reached to his village. And he said, the grid has not reached him yet. But the national grid has not reached him. I said, how fortunate you all are. And so I thought, okay, the national grid has not reached there. And I laughed about it and I said, well, but actually it came sometime later. I have to remember where I am here. I worked to bring affordable electricity, clean energy to the Himalayas because I wanted to, because I felt that people deserved it. And I then went and made an electric vehicle industry and made electric vehicles because I was choking. My family was choking. The people around me were choking. Kathmandu, this, what is it called? The Switzerland of Asia, was the second most polluted country, the second most polluted city in the world, after Mexico City, I think it is. And by doing so, by going into that industry, and mind you, we all have to learn from our faults. And there was no small measure of arrogance on my part. At the time, being young and gung-ho and having a lot of energy, that arrogance drove me into areas, you know, it's like driving along minding your own business and all of a sudden your Jeep's in quicksand. So I was minding my own business and electric vehicles were great and we were producing them and somehow crept under the radar, but all of a sudden the diesel lobby reared its ugly head on my family in a kind of, you know, I rolled with the punches, but they were pretty hard punches in those days. And so it goes that when you hit into, just like if you were digging in your backyard and you hit a buried electric line, it's shocking, but you realize, well, there's something going on below the surface there. And this is called vested interests. And vested interests, and so I came to learn in the small fishbowl of Kathmandu, where I was kind of a big fish, I came to learn that what is the structure of political power? How do corporations influence the government? Because why? Because I was one of them. Yes, I was clean solar energy, and I was finding myself having to cross a lot of black and white lines, trying to grade them out in order to make solar part of the agenda of the government. And when you mix with ministers and ambassadors, you start to realize what the game really is, how it works. And so the one thing I gained over there is that coming back here, I know it's no different. In fact, the National Grid had reached that boy's village. He just didn't know it. And I'm not talking about myself, but in general, you know, our penetration of corporations into Nepal, as infantile as it may have been at that time, that whole region is infiltrated and owned and processed and chewed up and spit out, just like it happens over here. And so, in a sense, there's no difference in the world where there are people, there are these kind of things going on. So that's the first part of the story, why when I saw this fracking film, and I knew about fracking, but it wasn't in my backyard per se. I just moved back from Nepal 5 years ago. Fracking was not an issue in the Himalayas. But I resonated right away with Varushka, what she was doing, and the risks she was taking. Because I used to wake up with headlines. My headline was different from me. I would wake up and the Nepali Times would say, all firms with U.S. interest, out by tomorrow, Mappists. So that meant me. I was the only real American firm there. So it meant, you know, Mr. Friedenson, we will kill you if you don't get out tomorrow. And I'd have to, you know, blow the foam off my coffee and go ahead with the day, you know, even with that kind of headline, which obviously meant bomb threats and other things. But I understand what it means to face, you know, to face adversarial conditions like that. And I came back to America because I had done a lot already in Nepal, and I realized I'm not born in Nepal, and I'm not here to fight a Nepalese battle. The Nepalese have to fight their own battles, and I'm born in America, and the rubber band I had stretched snapped me back, and now after 20 years of being in Nepal and only 5 years back here, I think I'm over my jet lag, almost over the 20-year jet lag. Maybe not completely, as you might know if you ask me about current events. I don't know anything, so that's how bad it is. But what makes someone break bad? What makes someone break environmentally bad? So you have to look at that. Why would why would a guy who's running Monsanto or something poison the stream and the river? You know, and one time I remember sitting in front of a press club. We had a press club in Nepal. So whatever was going to be announced would be in a press club. And I thought, how am I going to get their attention? You know, all these Nepalese and the foreigner getting up there. And we were talking about electric vehicles at the time. And I did a trick. I kept an oxygen cylinder under the podium. And at a certain point I said, the future of your country is in a foreigner's hands. And they kind of looked up and they were getting a little angry and upset. I said, you're angry, right? They said, yes, we're getting angry. And I said, Well, and I lifted up the oxygen cylinder and I said, this is your future. It happens to be in my hands. But if you think you're going to take the profits that you get from running diesel vehicles and doing all these things to the environment, if you think you're going to take the profits and buy something, what you're going to be buying is oxygen cylinders for you to be able to breathe. So the problem is, everywhere, big pharma, big agro, fracking, the problem is the profits are privatized and the liabilities are given for the public to bear. That's called lack of accounting in anybody's word, right? So what is the cost of having the gas if all the cost of the people dying from fracking is not accounted for? It's a misaccounting and it's a misappropriation of funds. And it is also, there was some lady here, we were talking, she was, I think, an attorney, where was she? There. So she was saying, talking about carbon credits and saying, should I call it a dividend that we get back, or a rebate, some carbon rebate? I'm not so sure the precise issue, I forgot, and I said, it's not a rebate, it's a dividend. Because it's an issue of ownership, if you look at law. The government does not own the ground and the water and the air. They cannot sell licenses to pollute and take it into the government. They have to give that back to the people who own it, and those people have to make the decisions whether that is acceptable for them or not. But to get people to recognize that, it's largely another spiritual question of recognizing our interdependence. And that kind of thing has to do with introspection, not necessarily just lunging out and blaming and wrestling with the monster that's coming from our own groin. It's growing from our own groin, our own avaricious appetites. You know, we have to look at that. So I think this film is very important, the way she's played it, the crack and everything, that it is an all-pervasive issue. And the way to really crack that, as was pointed out, is art. And that is the voice of wisdom, the voice of women, the voice of wisdom. And so I would ask you all tonight if, and as a meditation teacher, I teach meditation, that's what I do. So as a meditation teacher, the spiritual part is that, you know, it's not enough actually just to meditate. Meditation has to bring you to some kind of clear understanding of what you must do, frankly speaking. People can contest that, and that's fine. I don't judge whatever people want to do, but that's my conclusion. And so, Varushka has done. And so, if you believe that you have to do, then do. And help her. The second thing is, my teacher said to me, this is an Asian person, an Indonesian person, who said to me, you have to suffer, otherwise you'll be miserable. So, you know, if it doesn't hurt when you're giving, you know, and you should suffer, because otherwise you will be miserable. You have to suffer to be alive, and you have to open up and breathe. So suffer a little bit and do something to prove to yourself that you're on the map, and make her film happen. Whatever you can do. If it's this much, it's this much. If you feel too much suffering, you can't do that, back it down a little bit. But, you know, don't let that go. So, I think I've spoken long enough. Tackle your fears. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much, Lama. Alessandra, are we going to have the next course, or do you? Okay, so we'll have the next course, and then I'll introduce Ray. But thank you so much for beautifully, you know, putting this, you know, in context of where we are right now, and that, you know, one of the things that I wanted to say, because I think a lot of you don't really know me, and so I just wanted to quickly sort of tell you just a little bit of like why I'm even doing this. To be honest, I mean, a few years ago I didn't even know what fracking was. And my father had just passed away, and I was actually on my way to move to California. I was going to move to California, and out of the blue, somebody came up to me and said, will you help me with this ad campaign, anti-fracking ad campaign? I was like, what is fracking? I don't know what you're talking about. So I ended up going to Pennsylvania, and the first place I went to was Dimmitt, actually. And I hadn't been to Pennsylvania in a really long time. And I always remembered Pennsylvania as being this beautiful state, green, all these farms, and I really was so shocked at what I saw in Dimmitt. And then I also went to Towanda. And I was in Towanda at the very height of like the boom season of fracking. Now, I know some of you are not, most of you are probably very familiar with what happens during the boom season. But I literally got out of the car and almost passed out from the smell. And I turned to the person that was showing me around, and who was a farmer, and I said, oh my God, what is this smell? And she said, what smell? We can get used to things, right? We can get used to things that will kill us. And quite literally, 2 people that I met during this time that I spent in Pennsylvania are now dead. And so that's what moves me to continue with this project, because it is not easy to make a feature film as a woman. And it's not easy to continue to believe in something that will actually try to shift the consciousness of everyone on this planet, because that's really, I believe, the goal of a lot of us. To understand that we're really at a very key time in our history. We are losing 50 species a day. Okay? We're facing our own extinction. So if we don't wake up, I mean, everyone I think here is already awake, but I'm just talking about on a massive scale, you know. If the planet doesn't wake up, or the people on this planet don't really wake up, I don't know. I mean, I do believe that we are reaching a point of critical mass. So I do have hope, I have a lot of hope. But it still takes all of us, everyone here in this room, and anyone else who's out there, to really do what we all can to make this shift happen. This shift that is, we have the possibility of being totally green. What you're doing and what you did in Nepal is so inspiring. And there are a lot of other people who are doing this kind of work. So we need to look at these examples of people that are living. It's like they're walking their talk. You're walking their talk. Zephyr, I mean, she's an extraordinary example of someone who's a politician who's walking her talk. And, you know, each one of us here tonight, I think, need to take these incredible inspirations of these people that are here speaking, that could have come a great distance to come and speak to us. And please be inspired by what they're doing, because they're doing it because they're passionate. They're following their heart. And that's a calling. You know, I had a calling. I mean, it's not even about me. This is not about me at all. It's a calling. I feel that it's so important that I basically, you know, devoted my life to this project. And it's much bigger than film. It's not just about the film. And it's about bringing people together in these kinds of events. Having us listen to you, to Zephyr, to Victoria, to Ray, and we're going to listen to Ray tonight. He's one of the people that inspired me, you know, in the first place to even take this up, because no person should be sacrificed. Just because, for what? We don't need that. We don't need to sacrifice anyone. We don't need to sacrifice our water. We don't need to sacrifice, you know, the environment. We don't need to sacrifice animals. We have another way. And so after, I guess we have our next course, I'm going to introduce Ray, but I just felt moved to say that, but enjoy your meal, and I'll see you later.